Hello, Convention of State supporters. My name is Andrew Woodruff. I will be your host for this episode of COS Live. Rita is not joining me, unfortunately. She'll be back next week. But momentum is building with our movement right now, and we are catching the attention of media outlets across the country. We're going to have a video that's going to show you some of the highlights and some clips of videos concerning that. Then we also have an exclusive interview with Senator Penry Gustafson, who is the South Carolina freshman state senator. She's recently been elected there, and she has an amazing perspective on what's going on with Convention of States in South Carolina. We're going to get in the know with her, and she's going to tell us about what's going on in South Carolina. Maybe South Carolina will be lucky number 16 to pass the COS resolution to drain the swamp in Washington. We'll have an interview with her in just a few moments. But before we get to that, of course, we have our Article 5 trivia giveaway question with COS Vice President Mike Ruthenberg. Mike, take it away.
Thank you, Andrew. I'm glad to be joining you today. There's so much happening with Convention of States. I'm sure you're going to be sharing all kinds of great legislative news today, some of the latest happenings that are going on. And of course, my role is to make sure everybody is up to date with so many new supporters coming to Convention of States. Ultimately, our trivia question is going to be asking a little bit about the history, because with conventionofstatesuniversity.com being kind of our preeminent training website, we want to make sure that you guys are coming in, taking a look at cosuniversity.com, finding out about Convention of States. If you're watching some of the live streams about some of the testimony that's going on, we're finding there's so many legislators that are just not really up to speed on what's going on. And as Ronald Reagan once said, it's amazing how much people in these positions know. What's unfortunate is how much they know just isn't true. And it's really important that we know that. So when we are educating and urging our legislators in our legislative districts, that we educate them and they know what's going on, so we can win this battle that we are fighting right now. Of course, the Article 5 movement has been going on for some time. And, the Constitution, when Article 5 was crafted along with the rest of the Constitution in 1787, and then later ratified in 1788, there's been a lot of Article 5 efforts throughout America's history, some for balanced budget amendment, some for term limits, there's equal rights amendment. There's so many different Article 5 movements that have happened in this nation. And what's different about what we're doing is that our resolution is not just for a single issue, and the reason for this is we don't necessarily think a single amendment to the Constitution can truly save our nation. Our Article 5 effort is based around three elements: fiscal restraints, term limits, and to reduce the size, scope, and jurisdiction of the federal government. That would be germane to our application. And many of you know we've passed this application in 15 states, on the way to 34 states, as it says in Article 5. And it's really important that we know our history. And one of the things that makes Convention of States incredibly effective is how long we've been around. In just a short period of time, we've gotten through 15 states. And my question for the day, and what I'm going to do, is I'm going to let you know that I've got a prize. And that prize today will be a pack of 10 of these pocket guides, this little guide right here. It's so important. It explains exactly what we do. You'll get a pack of those. You can hand them out to let people know what's going on. If you can answer this important question: what year was Convention of States founded? What year was Convention of States founded? Get your fingers busy, get them on the keyboard, and put your answers in. If you don't know, be looking at the comments. Comment on this great show that's coming up. And at the end, I'll come back and tell you what the answer to our question is. Back to you, Andrew.
Thanks, Mike. Well, a sleeping giant has been awoken. That giant is the people. We, the people, have had enough with the DC politicians. We're tired of the swamp, and we're ready to go and take power back from DC bureaucrats and career politicians. Amazingly, the founding fathers, they knew we would be in this situation, and so they gave us a solution as big as that problem in Washington, D.C., that swamp, and it's Article 5. Article 5 allows us to send the bureaucrats and the DC career politicians packing. Convention of States is the solution, and we're growing so much momentum right now. People are volunteering left and right. People are joining this movement. They're signing the petition. They're getting involved. But also, there are many within the media who are starting to see the momentum that we are able to generate. We have, over the last month, we've been featured on a total of 2,368 media mentions. That is incredible, including 104 video broadcast outlets. Take a look at a montage of videos that we have set up for you.
Would you support the state legislatures to urge Congress to call a convention of states? Well, the answer is absolutely. I have been a strong advocate for the Convention of States project, which is focused on term limits for Congress, a balanced budget, and judicial reform.
And we need a solution as big as the problem. And thankfully, our founders understood that, and they gifted us something called Article 5, which gave the power to the states to, if the federal government ever got so big, so expansive, so tyrannical, states could come together and pass amendments in their states. And if enough of them pass, then they hold a amending convention to rein in the federal government. It's right there.
And now look where we are, Mark Meckler. I mean, this is exactly why once in a while our government needs to be rethought and re-examined. That's what the Convention of the States is trying to do.
In the Constitution, our founding fathers gave us a remedy here. Article 5 of the Constitution gives states the power to call a convention, and that convention is designed to pass constitutional amendments to rein in federal power.
Our organization, conventionofstates.com, has over 5 million people engaged. We're in every state legislative district in the nation, and we are pushing a call for convention. Over 15 states have already passed this call, and the call is essentially the convention could discuss anything to impose term limits on federal officials, fiscal restraints on the federal government, or scope and jurisdictional restraints on the federal government.
I would encourage every one of our listeners to go support conventionofstates.com, go read them, find them, and call your state House member and state Senate member and say, I want our state to get involved in this if they're not already in it. What we're seeing across this country right now is this battle. It's convention.
Thankfully, there is a movement, an Article 5 Convention of States movement right now, Steve, that's gathering steam, where state legislatures, you don't need the governor's signature, state legislatures, the people's power, passed the same amendment. They created an amending convention where you can balance the budget, put in term limits, not just for elected officials, but for bureaucrats, and then rate in the size and scope of the federal government. It's the only thing that could actually get at the progressive problem and the progressive project of the last 100 years.
Clearly, we are breaking through the socialist censorship with the truth. As you can see, momentum is building. People are waking up to the fact that Convention of States is the solution. And we secured an amazing endorsement last week. We were able to get Mark Meadows to endorse the Convention of States project. He said, Joe Biden and Congress continue to push a leftist agenda, even encouraging rule changes to force their will on the American people. It is time for state legislatures to use their constitutional leverage and pass a Convention of States resolution. It's time to rein in the federal power of career politicians. I mean, that is a pretty strong statement by Mark Meadows, who had an amazing Convention of States endorsement. And he's not the only one. There are dozens of heavy hitters who have endorsed Convention of States. Mark Levin, Ben Shapiro, Sean Hannity, Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, Ben Carson. I mean, the list just goes on and on of people who have endorsed Convention of States. And the list, it's just going to keep growing because we are the solution. People are looking around like, oh my goodness, what are we going to do? How are we going to rein in these bureaucrats, these politicians? Are you going to rely on the governors? Can't rely on them. You're going to rely on Congress? Now you can't rely on Congress either. You're going to rely on the Supreme Court? You can't rely on them either. You can only rely on the state legislatures getting together to call the very first Convention of States. If we get 34 states to pass identical resolutions that call to limit the size, scope, and jurisdiction of the federal government, we can call a convention to propose amendments. Amendments like term limits for elected officials. We can propose amendments on fiscal restraints. We could also propose an amendment that would reduce the overreach that we have seen from the federal government. So if you have not joined this movement, if you have not gone to the Convention of States website to sign the petition, please go do that right now. Get involved in this movement. Join a local team. It is time to get involved to change DC forever. Last week, our Article 5 resolution passed a South Carolina House Judiciary Subcommittee on Constitutional Law by a vote of 3-2. A huge win for South Carolina. I know South Carolina is going to be the 16th state. Here to comment today is South Carolina State Senator Penry Gustafson, who is a freshman legislator in the South Carolina Senate and a supporter of Convention of States. So, Senator, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me on the show. This is quite a surprise and an honor. So I'm thrilled. I'm thrilled to be here and ready to answer any of your questions.
Absolutely. So let me just get into my first one. Congratulations, first off, on your recent election. You beat an incumbent, which is not an easy thing to do. So kudos to that. Just tell me a little bit about what led you to want to run for office in South Carolina.
Well, I've always voted. I've always been a really good voter. I've always been a Republican. Years back, when my children were relatively young, I heard about this rally at the State House in Columbia, South Carolina. And I went by myself with a little sign, not really knowing what I was going to. It turns out I was going to a Tea Party rally. And our governor, who was not governor at that time, Nikki Haley, was one of the guest speakers. And I remember thinking, who is this woman? She's great. I went home kind of energized. And when I moved to Camden from Columbia, South Carolina, I really dived into partisan politics and just kind of getting involved because I finally had time to do so. I was not working full time anymore, and my children were grown. And the more I got into it, the more I really felt like that's where I needed to be the most effective. And it's a long story, but it's God driven, and I'm here now. And I'm thrilled to be here. And it was not an expected path.
Mm-hmm. Well, tell us a little bit about the election process. What are some hurdles that you had to overcome? And please tell the viewers. COVID? Yes, okay, besides COVID, the big glaring one.
Well, there were a ton of obstacles. The number one obstacle that everybody faces in the beginning, of course, is money. And it's kind of hard because people want to give to someone they think is going to win. But if you don't already have money in the bank, they don't want to give you money. And then you go into this circular problem or challenge with that. But then there was COVID. But I ran for the South Carolina State House in 2018. So I've been basically running for 4 years. But my main challenge was going up against a very popular, enduring, lifelong leader in this area who was also a Democrat, who had been unchallenged. Nobody ran against him because I don't think anybody thought he could be beaten. And so my former incumbent, former opponent, it caught him by surprise. And I don't think anybody was really prepared to see me come on the scene the way I did it. It was strategic, and I was ready to win and do whatever I needed to do. COVID kept me from knocking on doors, so I ended up making over 5,000 phone calls from my house. 5,000 phone calls from my house.
That's
that was
a lot.
The right number. And with that, with every phone call, I would answer and talk to people and get their information if they wanted a yard sign and follow up and send the notes. But then when things opened up and we had a month-long time period to do in-person voting, that's what it was where I live, I treated it like a job. I would go to the voting places And I would park my car with all my signs, and I would greet voters from 3 to 5 hours a day, sometimes longer.
Wow.
And I did that in 2 different counties. I did that for a solid month, all the way up to election day. I went to 10 precincts on election day. But sitting there, introducing myself, my name, and really connecting with people, I mean, all day, I greeted thousands of people, a lot more than I would have just knocking on doors. But not being able to have public events, another hard thing, especially for someone without as much name recognition. So as soon as I could, I started hosting events. It didn't matter if people were coming or not. Sometimes it was very, very bare, and that's okay. The main thing was I had them. There were many opportunities for people to come out, for me to, for us to meet each other, and you know, they were spread on social media, that kind of thing. But and then of course the signs in my area where I live, you don't have yard signs, you're not a real candidate. You gotta have like 1,000 yard signs. So I started off the campaign when that time came. We had over 500 signs ready to go in people's yards. And we ordered about 2,000, I think, at the beginning. And I had some billboards, and I had Trump, President Trump on my billboard. And I mean, it was raw. I would go into places and just ask the owner, may I speak to your patrons, please? I am Penry Gustafson, running for the South Carolina State Senate. And most of the time, they were very nice. Sure, go ahead. And I would, you know, get my glass, and everybody would turn around, and I would just talk to the entire restaurant, give them my pitch. I did that everywhere. I did it at gas stations. I did it at restaurants. I did it at Walmart one time. Anytime people wanted to talk, I would stop there and talk. And I met a lot of people one-on-one. Basically, I was available to anybody 24/7 for a couple of years now. So I just put all my heart and soul into it, and I didn't let or allow these challenges to keep me down. The money thing, guess what? The personal touch trumps money. So if you can reach enough people, especially the ones who are already leaders in your communities, they can spread the word about you. So if you connect with the key people. In my area, we've got a lot of religious leaders. We've got tons of nonprofits, and I'm part of that world, and I've been doing community advocacy for years and years. So I had all these circles that I could kind of tap into, and they helped me. So asking for help and just asking, and not be afraid. I wasn't afraid to lose, so I wasn't afraid to go all out, because I knew the risk was just, I mean, the only thing that could happen was the guy wouldn't be elected. But I hung in there. I ran twice. I beat this incumbent who the family has been in, you know, over the area for almost 50 or 60 years. It's a family political affair, very known in the area, respected. So I feel I'm very humbled. I'm very humbled that I had this opportunity. And people here, I knew it. They were ready for the change, and the vote proved it.
And I just want to highlight one thing for the audience. I mean, there's multiple things to highlight there, but something that really caught my attention is that you saw an opportunity where others didn't. There was no one else who was ready to step into the breach to go and try and unseat this person, and you did it. You saw the opening.
Don't
drove
buy into
hard.
the narrative. Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. And this is the thing. I knew I was a good candidate. And one of the things is I'm not a lawyer. That really rang true for a lot of people. There's so many lawyer legislators have a big problem with that. I'm a real person, mother of 3, former business owner, someone who's very connected to her community in many different ways. Strong Christian woman. My husband is, you know, retired military.
So you identify with average Americans. You're
That's
right there with them.
I'm a real person.
Exactly. You're a real person.
People are ready for somebody real, instead of all the junk and the games and the, you know, the stuff you hear on TV and everything else. I don't play games. I'm very direct. And I think people appreciate that. At least they always know where I stand on an issue or anything else.
And that segues really perfectly into my next question, because there are several COS volunteers who end up going on to run for elected office. And some of them, it's just, city council. Others, it's even running for representative in their district. So what would you say to a person who's maybe thinking, I don't know if I have what it takes to run for office? What would you say to them, and what tips could you offer them?
I think everyone has a multitude of gifts. And sometimes we don't even know what they are yet because we haven't even tried. We need to have a more positive self-speak. All of us, culturally, everything is so negative. You can't do this. It's always about no and cancel. And who do you think you are? Because these people have been in office. They know what they're doing. Well, I'm here to tell you, if you're a tax-paying American and you're passionate about your state or your county or your town or whatever it is you want to run for, school board, then go for it. Don't let anybody keep you from doing something that you know in your heart you feel passionately about and you can give and make better and enhance and affect change in a positive way. Because ultimately, that's what at least most of us start out doing. Unfortunately, some people get astray, and that's why we have, unlimited government overreach right now, which I know we're going to talk about in a moment. But we've got to have good candidates. We have got to have good candidates. And so I decided I wasn't going to complain anymore. I could only write so many letters to so many legislators. I said, you know what? I can do this. I can do this. I've run a business. I have taken care of my family, and I won't tell you my resume, but sure, I'm qualified. You don't have to be a rocket scientist to be a legislator, believe me.
So your first few weeks in the state Senate in South Carolina, has it been eye-opening to you? I mean, we often hear that term, once you get on the inside, you see how the sausage is made. Is that the real case? What can you tell the viewers about the first few weeks?
I tell you, I've been fascinated. Now, it is like living in a civics lesson. I feel like I'm going to school every day, almost like I'm in graduate school. I'm taking notes. I'm learning protocols. I'm learning the rules, which are essential to being successful in the South Carolina State Senate. I'm listening to people who have been there for a while, or even longer than a while. My initial experiences have been positive. I've been respected. I don't know if you've heard, there are only 5 women in our 46-member body. 5, that's it. So I'm 1 of 5 out of 46. But there is no issue there. I feel completely respected, and everyone is so professional and dignified. Sincerely, that's been my experience so far, and just helpful. I pre-filed 4 pieces of legislation in December before I served 1 day in the chamber. And the people who were helping me with that inside the Senate were just gracious and helpful. And what I'm seeing is if you give out that graciousness yourself, it will come back to you. It's just kind of human nature about power and status and all that. It's very easy, can go to your head. I mean, everyone calls me senator now, which I am, and that's wonderful. But if I ever lose my way, and if I ever lose who I really am as a person, I told my friends, you better correct me. You better, call me on it if I start acting like that, because I am here because District 27 elected me, and I'm here for South Carolina and South Carolina only. So I'm still an idealist because I haven't been there long enough, I guess. But I've been happily surprised, and just I've been impressed and really, really enjoyed it.
So for those who are just tuning in right now, we are speaking with freshman state senator from South Carolina, Senator Penry Gustafson. Now, Senator, let's change gears for a second. Let's talk about Article 5. So last week, we're talking now that we're going to get into the meat and potatoes of why you're here. So last week, the South Carolina House subcommittee advanced our resolution, and they had positive things to say about it. And of course, the COS grassroots in South Carolina, they are optimistic about.
They're awesome. They're awesome.
And they're amazing. Yes. All of them are just absolutely amazing, especially in South Carolina. And they're just really energetic about passing in the House subcommittee. So how did you find out about Convention of States and the movement behind it? And why do you think it is so important for our resolution to pass in South Carolina and eventually pass in all 34 states to call a convention?
Oh, Andrew, great questions. First of all, I mentioned that first rally I went to was a Tea Party rally. Well, I had a friend who was very, very involved with state politics, and I became her +1 to everything, which was wonderful. And my very first +1 was to a Tea Party conference in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And these conferences, you see all kinds of people. I actually met the president, Donald Trump, at both years I was there, in 2014 and 15. Saw him right before he announced personally and right after. But it was at that first Tea Party conference in 2014 when there was a speaker there speaking about Convention of States. And I went to it and I sat through it and I bought a book. And then it sat. I didn't read it because I got busy. And then I went back to the book and I kept on hearing about it. And I was on the fence, quite honestly, for a while, for years. But where we are as a country in 2021 is not where we were in 2014. And we have big problems. And I think at this point, we need a big solution to those big problems. So I became involved with COS as kind of a bystander who just was learning about it. And then I kept on running into your representatives everywhere. And of course, they'd be like, here, have this CD, can you see that? I was given things all the time. And I kept on hearing a bunch of conservatives who supported this, like Mark Levin and Governor Ron DeSantis in Florida, and Rand Paul and Alan West and Ben Shapiro and Louis Gohmert, which by the way I met also at that same convention.
Oh wow!
But so it got my attention. I've been following it closely, and then I committed to supporting it fully about a year ago, I think.
Yeah, and so you're aware of the 3 planks that we have within the resolution: the fiscal restraints, term limits, and then reining in the jurisdiction of the federal government, putting limitations on their overreach. So in light of what has been happening in DC recently, do you have a favorite amendment that would fit within those 3 categories?
Well, you did say balanced budget, didn't you? And that,
yes.
Which one was that? Which number was that?
That's the fiscal restraints one.
Yeah, I think right this moment, like right today, this moment, that's the most important one. Spending trillions of dollars, which I can't even write out in long, huge numbers. My mind can't wrap around it. I don't have grandchildren yet, but I will hopefully one day. And I worry about the future. And it seems so cliche because I remember my grandmother saying this to me when I was younger, but we didn't have multi-trillion-dollar deficits, and we didn't have just ongoing spending that was just unlimited to all areas of the world, which some of it is well spent. But where do you draw the line? In my home, we don't spend what we don't have. I mean, my husband drives the truck. I hope he doesn't hear me say this, but he drives the truck that he was driving when we first met. Okay. It has rust on it. Okay. All of our children, us, we don't carry debt because we live within our means, and we're blessed with what we have, and we try to take care of it. And what are we teaching all of America in this new generation if we just spend with absolutely zero accountability? And that's what's happened. It's just, I mean, people talk about runaway Convention of States. What about our runaway government? It's a runaway government on all levels, but money, that's probably the first thing I'm most concerned about.
And then what about like the trajectory of the United States right now? I mean, you briefly talked about the spending and just like how could we spend even more? I mean, we're at like 29 trillion or, just north of that. So what do you think about where the United States is headed, and how do you think Convention of States can help change that trajectory to a different way?
Well, it's hard to answer that question because I've been so shocked of what has happened year to year to year. Like 2 years ago, if you asked me where we were headed and not knowing about COVID, totally different answer, right? I feel like we're living in an age where we don't know what's ahead and we can no longer guess. And that means we've lost control. Okay. The citizenry has lost control because we can't I don't even know. And that's part of the problem. What we do know for a fact is what's happening now. And the best indicator for what happens tomorrow is what's happening right now. So you have to look at what's going on right now. And what's going on right now is the powers of the federal government have gone too far. We need to rein in their scope. We need to rein in their jurisdiction. And I really feel like it's our generation. It's a generational thing. I think each generation is responsible for teaching history and teaching things and keeping things right and ensuring that individual liberty. And I think we're losing our individuality across the country, culturally, and in many other ways. And it's bad to not be an individual. I want to tell you something. It's God blessed to be an individual. He created each of us, every one of us. And so that's a blessing. And we should celebrate it. And our founders celebrated it in the U.S. Constitution by talking about individual liberty and our individual rights, God-given rights. So it's time to kind of reclaim that sovereign power back. And as a South Carolinian, as a leader and a senator for South Carolina, I am extremely dedicated to protecting our citizens' rights. And if a convention of states is what we need to do it, I'm behind it, and I'll support it, and I'll be a strong leader for that effort. So it's gotten started in the House side, as you know, and there is a Senate bill, and my name is on that Senate bill.
Wow, just speaking to the hearts of the viewers right now, talking about caring about the individual and caring about the Constitution, the Declaration, the founders, and all of the founding principles, speaking to my own heart as well. I mean, this has been an amazing interview. I have one question lined up before we conclude this. So for viewers who are curious, what can you share to them about what's next for Convention of States in South Carolina, and what can they do to help? All
right. Okay. So now we get to the crux of the matter, right?
This is the important part.
For Convention of States? Well, what's next is the voting by our General Assembly on bills that have teeth. I think this year, even though this movement's been happening for how long? How long has this movement really been active?
7 years, I believe.
Okay. All right. I think this year is the first year we've had the strongest legislation led by a lot more people. Having strength in numbers is absolutely essential for moving it forward. So it takes people who are not afraid to stand up for it. And people are very afraid of everything these days. This is the right thing to do. Don't fear doing what's right. So what's next is we pass this legislation. And all this does is puts our name in the pot for the government level, right? To consider doing it. It just says, we'll consider doing it. We'll participate, right? That's what this legislation is. It's very simple. It's constitutional. There's nothing nefarious about it. It's very straightforward. Anybody can go pull up a document and look at the Constitution and see that it's right there in black and white. So it's not like anybody's trying to pull a fast one. We are just using what we have available in our hands while we still can. Because if we don't, I think the government, we're looking at, looking down the line, we're looking, oh my gosh, we're looking at a government where there is just centralized power and the balance of powers are gone. And we're losing that. We're losing it when we have people in there for decades and decades and decades. We're just losing that. So how do we get it back? Again, like what I said, it's a big problem. It's complicated problems. So it's going to take kind of a complicated solution. But this is a fair solution. It's constitutional. It's clearly written. And we have an option. In South Carolina right now, we are looking at our options. And we're doing that through a vote. So the House is deliberating, and the Senate will be doing that at some point for our bill. My name is on it, so I hope to be able to speak to this bill in the South Carolina State Senate when it comes up. And I'm not sure when that is, but it will.
Well, we are certainly looking forward to that, and we hope that South Carolina will certainly join this movement to really change DC forever. Senator, thank you so much for joining us. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Please come back and join us anytime.
Thank you. And listen, I'd love to come back. There's so much I could say. I told your producer, I think I could be on here for hours and hours on end. My story is so unusual, how I got to be in office, and just make a plan, get as much money as you can to put that plan in action. And then go for it, and don't let anybody hinder you, and get good advice. Go to mentors, go to people you trust, ask them for help, ask them for their advice. And that's where I started. I just started asking people. And as far as the Convention of States is concerned, it is our right. It is our right to have our country in our hands. And I thank you again for having me on the show.
Well, amen to that. Thank you for joining us, Senator Gustafson, and can't wait to have you on again.
Thank you.
All right, and we have our answer to the Article 5 trivia giveaway. Mike, back to you.
All right, Andrew, I'm back. What a great show. Thanks so much for hosting this incredible live stream. We have so many people that are tuning in every week. And of course, the trivia question today was, when was the Convention of States project founded? This very important project that not only can bring term limits to our federal governments, not only can impose fiscal restraints on the federal government, but also reduce the size, scope, and jurisdiction of the federal government, the bureaucracy. We can route out some of that using this unique application or this methodology using the second provision of Article 5 in the Constitution. And if you were wondering when this was founded, it was co-founded, of course, by Mark Meckler and Michael Farris. Michael Farris, of course, a constitutional expert that has argued, one of the only living people, the only living person in America that has argued Article 5 at the Supreme Court level. He understands Article 5, and between Mark and himself, the Convention of States movement was founded in August 2013. That was when it was founded. And I'm sure we have a winner, and it's going to be exciting to send your prize. And you'll be able to send out these pocket guides to be able to promote Convention of States and really capitalize on the flood of people that are coming in as supporters to the Convention of States project. Thanks for listening, and back to you, Andrew.
All right, we're going to go ahead and sign off now. If you are sick with career politicians, if you are sick with the DC swamp steamrolling your rights, you should know that there is a plan. The founders, they foresaw that we'd be in the situation that we are currently in right now, with federal overreach, with runaway spending, a runaway federal government. They knew we would be right here. And so they were prepared. They gave us Article 5 of the Constitution, which allows us to use the Constitution to save the Constitution by proposing amendments at a convention. It takes 34 states to get to a convention. We currently have 15 states who have passed the COS resolution, and this COS resolution calls for amendments for fiscal restraints, for term limits, and to reduce the federal overreach that we have seen. And the federal government is just abusing their power, overreaching, and inserting themselves in your life. Well, it's time to change that, because Convention of States is using Article 5 to help you reclaim your self-governance. Go to www.conventionofstates.com. join this movement. So I want you to do two things when you get there. First, if you haven't signed the Convention of States petition, make sure that you do that. Sign the petition, get involved in this movement. The second thing that I want you to do, I want you to get involved. Join a local team, get ready, and get involved. This is your moment to make a difference. This movement is going to help you reclaim your self-governance. So help us to change DC forever by calling the very first Article 5 Convention of States. And then after you've done that, make sure that you go to social media to follow Convention of States. Go to Twitter, MeWe, Gab, Parler. You're already following us on Facebook, but then also go to Instagram. Make sure to subscribe on our YouTube channel so that you can get all of the up-to-date videos and so that you can see all of our most recent posts. It's a great place to get all of your COS information. And then also, don't forget to watch Mark Meckler on the Battle Cry every Sunday night at 8 p.m. Eastern Time right here on Facebook. But remember, if you're looking for the person who is going to save the Republic, look in the mirror because it's going to be you. Well, that's all we have time for today. Make sure to tune in next week for another edition of COS Live at 6 p.m. Eastern Time. And until then, we got a country to save, so let's get to work.